Yes.
So we'll look into in the later classes. Okay.
Okay.
And okay, let's start with our Kubernetes part 3, which is basically on the configuration file. So far we looked into the components. Could you recall the components? What were the components we studied so far?
Pods, ingress services,
Mm-hmm. Then,
grades,
okay, then,
stateful and stateless.
stateless is not a component, but you can say stateless itself is a deployment.
Yeah.
When you
Yes.
say deployment, it is a stateless, and stateful
Mm.
is a different one.
Yes.
Any other? Config
Mm.
and secrets. Config map
Mm.
and secrets.
Secrets.
Hmm. So in this class, we'll look into the YAML configuration. Okay, we'll deep dive, though you have studied, but we'll look into the more deeper one. Okay, each and every section we'll look to make it crystal clear, and then we'll do a project. Okay.
Okay.
So again, it has the part three part of this configuration file. Means you will be getting a YAML file in which we will divide into three sections, and each section will be denoting something. Now, in front of me, I have two services right now. One is the nginx deployment, other is the nginx service. Okay,
Mm.
so you can see what is the common thing in both of them: API version, kind, metadata, and spec. Okay, so these four elements is common in both. If I go with the
Yeah.
name, metadata contain the name and label, but here the metadata contain only the name. Why it is so? We will discuss in the later. But so far, you see, four part which we are seeing are common in both. So if one part is missing, you can identify that this is the missing one. Okay, that's the first thing that you have to look into. This is the common thing between service and deployment components. Now let's go one by one. First is the metadata. API version and kind. API version is basically whatever the app you're using with the version one. Same version you have to mention in the service as well. Kind, since it is a deployment component, we'll write deployment. It is a service component, so we'll write service. Now comes to the metadata. Metadata contains two parts, name and label for the deployment and name only for the service. Why? Because this label is being used for the further matchification. Means we have to match with the other components. But here nothing is going to be compared. So we do not use labels over here. Okay. So this part.
Mm.
Understood. Metadata, why do we use labels in deployment and why don't we use labels in service? You will also see in the further code as well. But so far, label is being further used for the matching of this container, whatever the container will be created, will match with this pod one. But here, we are not creating any pod or anything. We are just creating IP address. So we need not to going to match this label. We do not require label over here. That's it. The second part, any confusion from the first one, metadata? Any
No.
question? Okay.
No.
Let's go with the second one, that is spec. In full form, it is specification. The specification we mentioned in deployment, we actually mentioned how many replicas you want. Okay. Selector and template is the further task, but these things these things will create your pod. Specification create what kind of pod you require. Okay. Whereas here the specification says the pod that you have created, which port number it is going to be assigned. That is the task
Mm.
of this specification. And here the specification creates a pod of what type. This selector and template give it the type. We'll look into that one as well. So understood what is metadata and specification for both deployment and service component.
Yes.
Okay. This is not a component by component of the third part. It's just for the comparison that API version and the kind both will remain the same. Whereas in
Mm.
kind, we mentioned the kind of component you are using. API version, basically, here you are going to create your pods, putting your app into that one. That's why we need to mention apps. Okay. Slash, what
Okay.
version it is. If it is first time getting modified, V1, second time modified, V2. In the same version should be mentioned across all the components. This one also V1.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's see the attribute of spec. Attribute means these are the attributes, replica, selected template, okay,
Mm.
to the kind. So basically, these attributes are aligned with this deployment and the service one. If it is service, the attribute should be like that, means selector and ports only. Whereas if the kind is deployment, attribute should be replica, selector, and the template. Now, what are you going to fill into this one? We'll look into that as well. Now, what's the third one? Okay, let's see, which basically says the status. Okay,
Mm.
and this status is automatically generated by Kubernetes. Means you can check the status of your pod, it is running or not running using the describe command. We seen in the last class, in the last part, we have used the describe command, which let you to see whether the pod is created or not created. So these things come under the status, and this is being handled by Kubernetes. So no need to worry about the third part. Any questions so far? All good.
Yes.
Now let's look into the third part, which is the means the desired how the third part actually works. We'll look into that one as. So this actually deals with the third part you are not going to handle. Okay, this is being handled by Kubernetes itself. But if you go inside this one third part, what actually it does, it sees the desire and the actual. Now, what do you mean by desire and the actual? Actual means how many replicas you have. Desired means how many replicas you want. Okay. If they do not match with each other, then only status comes into the picture and make it equal to both. Suppose actual I'm having 2, but the
Mm.
desired one is 3. So this status comes into the picture and create another replica and match it both. Desired is basically what you mentioned here. Actual is basically what you see in your command prompt, the command line, that how many replicas created so far. Generally, if one replica got created, all the desired got created automatically. Okay.
Okay.
So first one is the replica that we have seen, and this is how the status looks like. That you don't have to handle anything. Okay. Here available replica is 1, and how many replicas we want? 2.
2.
So what status will do? Status will create another replica.
Yes.
Okay. So K8 update states continuously. Every time it updates the state. So if you
Mm.
see, I want, sorry, I want 2 replicas, but in status mentioned replica is only 1, which is not equal, right? So
Yes.
what happens? The server will create another replica, this one.
Mm.
And this replica once got created, and it will be, once both are matched together, then it will remain silent. Unless and until any inequality come into the picture, status will again, or the Kubernetes will automatically update it. Clear so far?
Yes.
Okay. Now, where does the K get the information? Like this one, it has, where does it get this information? Okay. One, you can say that replica is from here, whatever we mentioned. But here the desire is two, and it gets a one. One, why? From the previous one. Okay. Imagine from the previous uh, deployment, it gets one replica, or by default, it's having one replica. So the idea of getting this one, where does it come from? Okay. Does it store somewhere? So the answer is yes. In the master control, we have this master plane, master node, in which there is a API server, scheduler, control manager, and etcd. So what happened? This etcd stores the information of how many replicas you want, how many desired replicas available. So etcd is the cluster brain which stores the thing. Okay. Cluster changes get stored in the key value pair. So whatever we changes, it stores in the etcd. In what form? Key value pair. So YAML is also a key value pair. JSON format is also a key value pair, like that. So if anybody will ask you the data of status, where does it comes from? So how will you answer that one?
From the etcd.
From what?
Etcd.
etcd. And remember the master node configuration. Okay, how many components are inside this master and what are the roles of each component,
Yes.
and which component is known as the brain of the computer, brain of the master node. It's the
Okay.
etcd. Now, etcd holds the current status of any K8 components, not only deployment, whether it is service, config map, or ingress, all the components current status is being mentioned or stored by etcd. Mhm. If you do any desired changes, then you have to update that one, and the updated one will again get stored in the etcd.
Yes.
So this we have seen in the last class as well, the layers of abstraction, where the deployment manages your replica set manages your replica, okay, and replica is basically your pod replica. So pod is the abstraction of your container, right? One
Yeah.
more thing, if you see, when you create a deployment, you get a pod, right? That pod is actually a replica. If I mention three replica in my deployment YAML file, if I mention three replicas, so overall, how many pods you will get?
4.
Three.
And the one which we created?
That will be come under the replica set, because replica set is automatically created. Even if you are creating one, because for pod, what do you want? You want a deployment component, right?
Yes.
So in case of deployment component, you have to mention how many replica you want. If you do not mention, it won't work.
Hmm.
So you have to mention either one, two, three, right?
Yes.
So in the previous class, what happened? When we created one deployment, okay, automatically replica set got created having a one replica. So
Yes.
that replica is actual the pod, actually the original pod. Okay.
Hmm.
So if
Okay.
that pod got deleted, we don't have any backup for that one.
Hmm.
Is it?
Yes.
No. If that pod got deleted, we will get another one, because here we mentioned replica as one.
Hmm.
So it will
Yeah.
always maintain that state, having one pod always available. Even if you delete that one, it will again come back.
Hmm.
Not the same one, a different one. Very important. Okay. People miss this one, that replica is different from the actual pod. Whereas replica itself is the actual pod, but the actual pod name is different compared to the replica one, which the original one is always in use. If that one got deleted, this get replaced by the replica. So you have one
Hmm.
replica always available for your pod. So whatever, just in simple, if I have to say, whatever mentioned replicas over here, only that much amount of pod you will be getting in the replica. Okay. That's why it is mentioned over here. The deployment manages the replica set, and replica set manages all your replica pod, whereas one of your main pod will be residing. But if that pod got deleted, three more. We will see right now. Okay.
Hmm.
So far, everything is clear.
Yes.
If an interviewer asks that if I create one pod and in replica I mentioned two, how many total we have? How many total pods we have?
3.
Three.
One
Sure.
pod plus 2 replicas.
Uh-huh. It will always be two. Let's get the confirmation. Okay. Why? Because I create a new chat. Let's ask with ChatGPT. If the if two, then how many total pods we have? Will it be three or two only? Right?
Yes.
So the set of replicas will always be two. Then only you have exactly two pods. That's the
Okay.
main task. Okay.
Hmm.
If one of the pod out of two is deleted, it will be replaced by another one. But
Yes.
every moment you will be having only two replicas, not more
Hmm.
than two. Okay. Your original one is also here, not
Hmm.
the separate. Okay.
But with
You
a
will be
different
using,
name.
you will be using that original one. But the moment that original suppose got deleted, it will be again replaced by another replica. Okay. Because it has to maintain the ratio of two always. So
Okay.
amount of replica set or amount of pod depend upon the replica. If you mention three, you will always have three replicas. That's it. No more confusion at all. Okay.
Okay.
Now comes to the other
Hmm.
part, which is the selector and the template. Let's look into the template first. In and template you will find only in the deployment. Okay. And
Hmm.
if you see, the template has its own metadata and own spec. Okay. Why so? Because this template actually creates your container, and this whole one creates your pod. So in this is a pod and this is your container underneath. So your container is actually on pod. So to match my container with my pod, I need to have this label, okay, same as this app label. If it is nginx, it has to be nginx here as well. Got it? The first one. This metadata label container one matches with the pod one.
Yes.
I'll show you side by side as well. Go here. Mm, I have documentation. Deployment, click here, go down. See, this is the pod one. What is the label? Nginx. Okay. And this is the
Yes.
template. What is the label of the template? Nginx,
Nginx.
which is same as the pod one, and it has to
Hmm.
be same. Okay. Selector is basically matches the label. भाई this is saying in Hindi I'm telling that ये pod और ये जो container है these are getting matched with which label? These are getting matched with nginx label. So
Hmm.
selector is responsible for matching the label across the pod and the container. ओके, तो
Hmm.
अगर यहाँ पर मैंने 1 लिख दिया तो ये काम नहीं करेगा, क्यों? क्योंकि ये किस है, सिलेक्टर काम है मैच करना, और ये मैच कर रहा है कि भाई ये भी nginx ये भी nginx, बट मुझे क्या बोला गया है, nginx
Hmm.
1 मैच करने के लिए, which is wrong. So all the three places should be having the same label. If it is label inside one component, it has to be the same. Okay.
Okay. Hmm.
So this is the metadata of the container, and this is the specification of the container. And since it's a container, we will write container over here. What kind of a name you want to give? This name can be different. It's totally fine, because this is going to be your container name. So any name you can give. You can even omit also. So by default, any name will be given, as we have seen in the Docker class. If you do not provide the name, automatically it gives the random name. And then you provide what image are you going to pull, which is the important one from the Docker Hub, and on
Hmm.
what port number it is going to be assigned. Remember, you cannot put any port number here. If it is nginx, it has to be 8080. Or even Jenkins also host in 8080, right? But if it is
Yes.
MongoDB, it should be 2017.
Yes.
And if it is Mongo Express, 8081. Okay,
Hmm.
their original port number. How will you get this original port number? From the Docker Hub itself.
Yes.
Okay, so understood. Inside this template, what you have to fill? The container detail, and it
Hmm.
has its own match and specification. So if you remember, it's like this. There is 4 part inside the kind, app version, kind, metadata, and spec. For
Yes.
deployment, inside spec, there is again one uh, metadata for the container one, metadata and spec. Metadata contain your labels matching, and spec contain your container configuration.
Hmm.
So even without seeing any template also you can write, but template is always available. Okay, as we have seen for the deployment, go to the Kubernetes page, you will always find the template. Okay, so this label applies to the pod. It will get matched with the pod one, pod label. Okay, and this part actually creates your image along with the which port number. So it's a blueprint of your pod. Since one pod I'm creating containing the one container inside it. Clear?
Yes.
So if someone asks you how your pod would look like, so our pod will be looking like this container. That's it. It's a blueprint
Okay.
for a pod.
Hmm.
There's a pod which hosting this nginx image. That's it. So far, template we have covered. Okay. Any question?
Hmm. This template will automatically create the pull the image and create the container.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
This will automatically do everything. Now
And
let's see
also
the
create
connect.
the replicas.
Say again.
And it will also create the replicas and
And it
pods.
will, yes, whole
Okay.
deployment will create your replicas. Total will be 2, including the
Okay.
origin. Both are
Okay.
actually original.
Hmm.
So connecting components, label, we have seen label. Okay. Selectors, we have seen the selector.
Hmm.
The label of selector get matched with the label of container and the label of pod. When both are matches together, then only it goes forward. And the port we will see in the service one.
Yes.
So labels and selector you will find over here for the match purpose. Okay. Spec, selector, metadata. Selector is also available over here. Okay. And this selector, since service and deployment are connected with each other. Okay. So this is what I just said before, that the metadata of the pod, okay, having the
Hmm.
label name as nginx should
Hmm.
match with the label name of your template.
Tem- Okay.
Okay. And this match label nginx will match these two along with the service one. So if you see the spec selector app is nginx, this has to be the same port. Then only connection will establish. Because who is responsible for giving the IP address to the pod? Which component?
Service component.
Service component. How will
Yeah.
service come to know that there is a pod? Okay. By which name? By this selector.
Yes.
Okay. So app is
Hmm.
nginx. So this will match with the label app nginx. And then only it will get connected and give. Otherwise, nothing is same between both of them. There is nothing that connecting them except this selector. The
Hmm.
selector is again the important one, establishing a connection between service and the deployment. Here it is. Okay. In both the cases, you will find the spec. The only one extra component that deployment consists is the replica. How many pods you want? Two. That's it. Okay. Two pods with the same configuration. Okay. Nothing will change. Both the pods will be hosting the nginx image into it. Selector is for matching across all the pod and container and the service, and establish a connection between service and deployment.
Hmm.
Any question? This is the important one. That what makes the service
Hmm.
have the connection with the deployment, or they may ask you in the YAML file how the service come to know which pod I have to assign IP address. So through the YAML, it's a more in-depth question. Okay, the interviewer will try to check whether you are able to understand, or whether have you ever write the YAML code or not. YAML this one.
Yeah.
So if you say that the spec part is basically responsible, so inside spec what? Inside spec you will have another attribute named as selector.
Hmm.
Okay. So this selector is actually responsible for providing the IP address to the pod by matching or establishing a connection with the deployment. Mm.
Okay.
So any KPI value for the components, this label has to be matched with each other. Okay. And this label is matched, this match label by the selector. This is the service one. Okay. So both, this is the match label with which both the labels is being matched along with the service label as well. So you can see both name should be the same. Whatever the name of your pod, nginx, should be the same as nginx. This match label will match it together. Pod name and the service name are together or not, same or not. If it is same, then only assign the IP address.
Yes.
So these three component, these three label has to be the same name. And who is responsible for matching? Selector. Okay.
Filter. Hmm.
Then there is a further one more component in this one service component you will find is this part, port. As you
Hmm.
can see, we have covered all API version for service. Kind also we know, metadata we also know. Any name you can give. Okay, if it is service, we have service name. Specification selector, we now know the what is the importance of selector. And last part is the port. So port looks like this. First, what protocol? TCP transmission control protocol. If it is the local one, okay, I'm running in my
Hmm.
local. Okay. Then on what port you want to run your application? In the port mapping of Docker, we try to run uh, on our desired port, right? Whatever the
Yes.
port we want. So this is that part. I want to run on 80, 8070, 8060. You can mention any port, but the
Hmm.
target port should be same as the container port. Okay, there should
Okay.
not be any difference. This port is the host port. You can change to any port number, but the target port should be same as the container port. And the container port should be the specific one which nginx actually hold in the Docker hub.
Okay.
Okay. And that's all for this part 3. We have covered all the body part of Kubernetes. I'll just show
Hmm.
you the service one as well. Type service, we'll get the service, slowly come down. See here, app version, kind is service. Basically, what component is this? Kind, I mean service. So I'll write service. Metadata, whatever the service name you want to give. If it is your app,
Hmm.
give your app name hyphen service. Then specification, first is the selector. Okay, this is the advanced one that people Kubernetes did some changes, but people still use only app. Okay, app equal to or app colon whatever the label is with same with the deployment one, you give that label. And then you have port protocol TCP for the local. I want to host on 80, but the target host is 9376. Okay. And furthermore, for every port definition, if you want to give, there is a okay. You may find sometime this triple dot. This is basically separates two files. Two, if you have two different YAML file and you want to write in single YAML file, then just give this. I can write deployment and service together in single YAML file just by separating this. You see, it has its own service.
Hmm.
Okay, what is this? It is a deployment or service? You tell me.
Deployment.
Why?
It takes a pod.
Huh, okay. Kind is pod. Okay, that's good. So either
Okay.
you can write deployment or you can write pod. Okay, both will
Hmm.
work. And then in a specification, I'll directly see the container.
Yes.
So container is only mentioned in where deployment one
Hmm.
and service, see the service.
It takes port.
Huh. Service is this one and both written in a single YAML file. Okay, I do not require two different files. So if it is very lengthy, then create two different YAML file. If it is simple one, then create a single YAML file having the pod and the service together,
Okay.
separated by this three dash.
Hmm.
As you'll move forward, complexity may increase. Okay, based on the complication you have. See, different for the based on the IP addresses also you can have instead of the port number. So you will find for every multi-port service if you want. Okay, there are a couple of more ports. For HTTP, they are having two ports, TCP and this. For HTTPS, they are having the another. Okay, so that's all. Explore more into this one.
Hmm.
We covered also secrets as well. Okay, secret is again one of the component. How it looks like, you can come here and see how secrets look like. This one is quite long, but you can see they have merged two YAML file into one. So which one is the deployment and which one is the secret?
First one is the secret and second is the deployment.
Correct. Okay. So secret is only this much. Okay? Secret
Yes.
basically contain your secrets,
Password. Hmm.
password and all. And that to be
Hmm.
mentioned in this type of format, not the actual password you cannot mention.
Okay.
Okay. And then we have config map. System. It's a config map. So config
Hmm.
map basically, I'll show you the better one. It generally is in use. These all are for the different uses. Okay. But generally this is used, okay, for environment where you have, admin and username and this admin level. Let me go down and show you a better one. Mhm. Hmm. You can use this one too. Remember when we were using, suppose I'll type Docker hub. This is the foundation I'm creating for our project. Okay, so that not much explanation needed in that one.
Mm.
If you go here, if I type Mongo, okay, so was it easy to get Mongo? Because while installing the Mongo image, we need to mention the environment variable as well. Remember
Yes.
these
Yes.
two? So these
Mm.
environment variable we actually mention in the config map. So if you see the config map, it contains the env. Env means basically the environment variable. What is the
Mm.
name? The name basically would be this one. Okay, Mongo init itdb root username. Okay, and what value you want to give inside that. So this will be like this, and this value, this key will be matched with the secret one, because password I cannot write here directly. Password will be available in the secret. So secret
Yes.
should be matched with this key. So we'll establish some kind of connection between them. So this key will get the secrets from the secret component, or the
Mm.
password from the secret component. Okay, even for the Mongo Express also, we looked into the Mongo Express as well, where we need to put, we go down, again we need to put three parts. First one, the
Mm.
admin user, admin password,
Mm.
and the server.
Server. Mm.
Okay, and this has to match with the container name.
Mm.
Okay, in your container name, where you will find your container name in the deployment, where we create our container.
Mm.
So that's all about the configuration files. We have covered almost everything which is intermediate level can look into that one. Okay.
Mm.
I'll just stop the recording.